Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Owen Bly, and I'm Associate Dean of Admission at Providence College, and we're pleased to bring you a presentation on the services, resources, and advocacy that take place at PC with issues related to mental health. We hope that this session will provide information on the efforts around campus to remove the stigma related to mental health, as well as the services that are provided by our Personal Counseling Center. To those of you admitted to the class of 2024, we hope that this webinar provides valuable information as you look to solidify your enrollment plans for next fall. And for those of you just beginning your college search, we hope this shares as a good introduction, and we hope to have the opportunity to go into greater detail on campus with you once this current situation passes. Before I have my two colleagues and one of our current students introduce themselves, I'd like to provide a little bit of housekeeping. Following the initial presentation and remarks by our panelists, we're pleased to host a question and answer session. Please submit any questions that you have at any point using the Q&A widget at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You'll notice that the chat feature is also available, but we will not be monitoring it and may miss your question. So please use the Q&A widget if you do have any. Now, without further ado, I'm pleased to turn things over to our panelists who will introduce themselves first before providing more in-depth comments on their involvement with mental health at Providence. Brooke?
Hi everyone, my name is Brooke Vitulli. I am a current student at Providence. I'm a sophomore psychology major, and I am also going to be one of the co-presidents of our mental health advocacy club, Active Minds, in the fall.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Dator. I'm the Associate Director of the Personal Counseling Center. I'm a licensed psychologist in Rhode Island, and I'm a credentialed registrant of the National Register of Health Service Psychologists. I've been working as a psychologist at the Counseling Center for 4 years now.
Hi everyone, my name is Cheryl Granai. I'm both a registered nurse and a mental health counselor, and I am the coordinator of outreach and prevention here at PC.
All right, so I'm gonna kick off our webinar today. So I personally didn't know what Active Minds was before going into college, so I'm first going to give you some background info on the club as a national organization and then go into my experiences with Active Minds as a PC student on PC's campus. Active Minds was founded by Allison Malman when she was a junior at the University of Pennsylvania following the suicide of her older brother and only sibling, Brian. She recognized that Brian's story is the story of thousands of young people who suffer in silence, who, despite the large numbers of people with a mental illness, think they're totally alone. At Penn, she saw that no one was really talking about mental health issues, although many were affected. 1 of every 5 students lives with a mental health condition, but stigma and shame were preventing students from reaching out. Allison looked around for existing groups she could simply bring to Penn to begin to change the culture on campus, but she couldn't find one. So instead, she created her own and formed a student group then known as Open Minds. The group's #1 goal was to spread the word that seeking help is a sign of strength and not something to be ashamed of. This group expanded into a national organization we now know as Active Minds, with chapters on over 800 campuses, one of them being Providence's. The main mission of Active Minds is that mental health needs to be talked about as easily as physical health. Only then can we bring mental health issues into the open so no one struggles alone. Now that you have some background on Active Minds as a national organization and understand what the goal is, I'm going to talk about my experience with Active Minds on the Providence campus. I first heard about Active Minds during orientation, where one of the previous co-presidents had given a speech about Active Minds' mission. I immediately knew it would be a club I could thrive in, as mental health is something I'm clearly passionate about. I went and found their booth at the involvement fair on the first weekend, where all of our clubs are represented, and signed up. I remember at the first meeting being taken aback by how open all of the exec board was about mental health, because at my high school, everyone fell into the stigma and kept their mental health issues to themselves. Because everyone was so welcoming and open, I found myself becoming more open and more aware of my own mental health. I came to realize this club wasn't only about discussion and advocacy surrounding mental health issues, but also a safe space to just share how I was feeling or how my counseling session went that week. At the end of each meeting, we do a fishbowl where members can write down an anonymous message or question or inspirational quote, or honestly whatever they want to share, that we can discuss. So even if I wasn't comfortable sharing my personal business that week, but still want to talk about it, I had the opportunity to do so. I also came to realize how much I could learn from this club. Each meeting, there was a specific topic we'd be talking about, ranging from a specific mental illness, such as OCD or schizophrenia, to how mental health and social media are related. I've also made some great friends from this club, who I couldn't be more grateful for, one of them being my future co-president. Admittingly, I initially struggled at the beginning of college to find my group of friends. However, because of Active Minds, I still felt loved and a part of the Providence College community. Outside of my personal experience and just talking about Active Minds' presence on Providence's campus, we host numerous events throughout the year to raise awareness surrounding the importance of mental health. Our events definitely encompass a variety of platforms surrounding this advocacy. My personal favorite event is the Thumbprint Project, where different ink colors are associated with a different mental illness, and students put thumbprints down on a poster board representing someone they know with that mental illness. This activity stands out to me because it shows how many people are affected by mental illness and that you are never alone. We also put on an event called Kindness Rocks that we do the Friday before finals week each semester, where students can stop by and paint a rock with a positive message on it as stress relief. We then scatter these rocks around popular places on campus to surprise students with uplifting messages and hopefully provide them with some smiles during those stressful times. This is also a fun quarantine activity if you're looking for something to do. We also bring in speakers to give students an inspiring and firsthand account of others' mental health experiences. Our most recent speaker happened to be an event called Inside Out Week. Inside Out Week is a collaborative event put on by the college to help students make sure they are taking care of themselves both mentally and physically, or both inside and out. My favorite event took place during this week, which is my second favorite event, took place during this week, which is Trash the Scale. We wrote uplifting messages such as, "The number doesn't matter, but your happiness does," with Sharpies on a clear scale to emphasize that weight does not define you. We will also just put on a simple paint night or self-care night as a stress relief and mental break activity. Overall, I am truly blessed to be a part of Active Minds and be able to help share such an important concept. My main takeaway that I learned from this club and that I wish to share with you today and has truly stuck with me is that not everyone has a mental illness, but everyone has mental health. Thank you for listening, and I'm now going to pass it on to Jonathan, who is going to speak about the resources available to students on campus.
Thank you so much. And before I even start, I guess I just wanted to share that I wanted to thank all of you for being part of this. You know, it's quarantine or not, it is 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, and there's probably a lot of other things that could be happening. And so you being here and doing this shows how much this topic matters to you. And not to put words in anyone's mouth, but speaking for all of us, you know, we see that and we appreciate that. So 17 years ago, April of 2003, I started losing my eyesight, and now I'm legally blind. And I will never forget a doctor's appointment I had with a neuro-ophthalmologist in which he said to somebody in the waiting room, "Oh, blind person in room 3," referring to me. And I sat there in that room in that moment and I thought, is that all who I am? That's it? I'm just labeled. And I wasn't even ready to accept that as my identity yet, because it was just happening. It was brand new. And that was just when I was figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I was a sophomore in college. And from that moment on, I have made it like a dedication in my own life to make sure that whoever walks in my office is not labeled with a condition that they have or with a disease, and that they're just the person sitting across from me, and that I have their back, whether we're in the room together or I have their back with an event that I'm doing on campus, or they feel supported by me. And I will share, I would not still be working at Providence College if I didn't feel like the rest of our staff at the Counseling Center took on that same approach. So I'm not trying to talk up PC or the Counseling Center, but I see that every day when I come to work, that we have a staff at the Counseling Center that are dedicated to the students and go out of our way to make sure people feel supported on our campus. That resonates with me both personally and professionally, and that's why I just shared that very brief personal story. To tell you a little bit about the Counseling Center and our services, we have 5 licensed psychologists at the Counseling Center, all of whom are licensed in Rhode Island. 3 are female, 2 male. We have 2 social workers who are licensed and do therapy from the Counseling Center as well. So we have 7 individuals who are licensed. We have 2 interns every year. As the associate director, I serve as the training director. So I supervise both of the interns with their cases and all the students they work with. And then we have 1 postdoctoral psychology fellow, who's just someone who just completed their doctorate degree in psychology and is working with us full time for a year to get the hours that they need. So in total, we have 9 staff to work with the students on campus. We have about 4,000 students at PC, as you likely know, and we're very busy at the counseling center. Last year we saw about 19% of the campus. This year, if it had not been for the coronavirus and us moving to Zoom for our appointments, we probably would have hit 25%. So our numbers are very high. We're very busy. And I want to tell you a little bit about the services because I think it's great that we're busy. It's great that we're busy because when I started working at PC 4.5 years ago, we saw 16% of the campus. And so that jump up, when you watch TV or read the newspaper, they consider that a mental health crisis. I don't see it that way. I see it as this is a positive thing that we now have more students coming through the door because number 1, that means they know who we are and that we exist on campus. And number 2, that the stigma is being reduced and people feel comfortable enough thanks to student clubs like Active Minds who are letting students feel like I could go in there if I needed somebody to talk to, an uninvolved third-party person in my life. So the way that our services work is that somebody can either call our front desk or just walk into our office. We're located on the 1st floor of Bedford Hall, right across from the business school, and talk to the front desk staff and say, I'd really like to come in for an appointment. If the student is feeling as though they're in crisis and it's an emergency and they cannot keep themselves safe, we have somebody meet with them immediately. They come in they get a same-day appointment. We make sure that they get everything they need that day. Now, if the student shares with the front desk that, I just kind of want to get this set up. I want to come in every week or every 2 weeks, or I don't even know how often I want to come in. I've never met with a counselor before. You'll get set up for what is called a consultation appointment. The first appointment is always a consultation appointment. What happens in that appointment, if you've ever been to a counselor before, at some clinics or private practices or hospitals, it's also called an intake appointment. So that first appointment, we ask the students the same exact questions at that appointment. So no matter why you came in, you're going to get asked the same questions. And it's usually about your history. So your family history, your history socially with friends and significant others, your history academically, your history physically, medically, your history with trauma, your history with alcohol or other drug use, your history with risk, as well as some of your strengths and your history of protective factors and things that help you cope and make you who you are, and getting a sense of who's sitting across from that therapist that day in that room. And then what'll happen after that first appointment is the appointment will come to an end, and you'll tell the counselor, you know what, I think this is all I needed. I'll contact all of you if I need another appointment someday. Or as a student, you might say, yep, I do need this. I'd like to come in every 2 weeks, or I'd like to come in every week. And the counselor will help you assess. The counselor might say, based on what we're talking about here, every 2 weeks is probably best for you. Now, if you're really struggling and it's a tough period of time, the counselor might say, let's start you off with every week and then move you to every other week. This is really important, actually, because you work with the counselor to sort of decide, how many appointments do I need? Do I need weekly? Do I need every other week? Because I don't know about all of you, but I don't always know that. And so it's got to be a collaboration. And it's good to talk about that together. So oftentimes what'll happen after that is the student will say, you know what, they might say to me as a male, it was great meeting with you today, but I think I'd feel more comfortable talking to a female. Or they might tell the female counselor, I kind of prefer to work with a male, or I'd like to work with a counselor who identifies as Catholic or not. or a counselor who identifies as a person of color, or a counselor who identifies as an immigrant, or identifies as someone in the LGBTQ plus community. We really want to make sure that you find a counselor that is the best fit for you. And then after that first appointment, you will get an email from the front desk saying, your next appointment is on blank day with blank counselor. And it's usually exactly with who you requested. Or if you have no preferences for a counselor, it will just be whichever counselor we think will be the best fit for you, because we then have a meeting after your first appointment in which we decide which counselor will meet with which students to make sure it's the best fit possible. Now, we're not perfect and nobody is. And so you might meet with your counselor a couple times and say, I'm not sure this is the best fit, but I'm afraid to now tell the counselor that I might want to switch to a different counselor. I will share with you all right now, we never take that personal. People switch all the time. People might say, you know what, that person I met with the first time for the consultation, I'd like to see him again or see her again. And I'd like to switch back to that person. And if they're available, we'll make sure you get the change in counselors that you're looking for. Something very important to share too, a lot of colleges and universities, I've worked at 6 colleges and universities, and all of them, except for Providence, had a certain number of appointments you could come to every year. Maybe it was 10, maybe it was 5 or 6 each semester. And then once you hit that limit and you needed more, they would refer you to a counselor in the local area that you could see off campus. Here at PC, there is no limit in the number of appointments. You could see your same counselor for 4 years if you felt like that's what you needed, on and off or consistently. There's never a session limit on how many times you can come. Additionally, we're fortunate that we have a pretty large staff. As I said when I first started talking, there are 9 of us. And so there's no waiting list. So if you come in, you have that first consultation appointment, your next appointment is usually 1 week or 2 weeks later. You're never on a waiting list. Maybe at some colleges it's up to a month right now. Some colleges it's a 2-month waiting list. And we rarely refer students to the local area unless it's something very specific. So if you come in and say, you know, I'm experiencing OCD, I would like to meet with a counselor who specializes in OCD. In that case, we'd refer you to someone in the local area who does just OCD work, because we'd want you to see the best person possible. Or a certain type of therapy that maybe nobody on our staff does, we would find someone in Providence who you could see to make sure that it was the best fit for you and you were getting your needs accommodated. That's what we do in terms of our individual counseling. We also have multiple group counseling options, and I just want to briefly touch on those. Every year we run a group called Anonymous, and it's run by Susan Ellingwood. She's a social worker on our staff who is an alcohol and other drug counselor. So it's for students who either want to stop drinking or stop using other drugs, or they just want to reduce the amount that they're doing, so to not do so in excess. It's a therapy process group in which students can kind of meet with each other, meet with Susan to get techniques on how to best cope with what they're dealing with, and receive the support that they need. Next year coming up, we're going to have an LGBTQ plus support group for students who identify within the community or who want to serve as allies in the community and want to be able to support other students. Additionally, we're going to have a group next semester called Connecting Across Cultures, in which students who are from first generation backgrounds or who are immigrants to the United States or who are international students can meet with counselors and feel supported within a group setting. We have one counselor on staff who runs a group called Coping Skills, and it's a workshop more than even a group. So people come in for about 5 or 6 times, and that counselor provides very specific techniques on how to reduce anxiety, mindfulness, meditation, acceptance and commitment therapy. And in addition to that group, I would share that everything we do at the counseling center, nobody's doing it on a whim. So it's based on empirical research, It's evidence-based techniques and practice to cope with anxiety, depression, relationship difficulties, trauma history, all the things that bring people to our counseling center every day, and making sure that we're providing you with techniques that are actually backed up and that have worked for a lot of people. Additionally, we do a lot of outreach and presentations on campus to different student clubs. Whenever needed, we do training for the resident assistants, the RAs. We do training for other people at the college to learn how to best communicate with students who might be struggling, or to recognize a student who's struggling. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about public safety, talking about cafeteria staff and workers. I'm talking about professors. We do trainings for all of them on how to best communicate in a sensitive way, both in terms of mental health and culturally, so that students feel like they're being heard and supported and not dismissed. That's really it on my end. I want to toss it over to Cheryl right now, but if you have any questions, I look forward to answering those later on in the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. So my role here is, I'd say, three-tiered. I do some student support work, I do student trainings, and I also organize events and programming around mental wellness and mental health. As far as the support work that I do, when I started here, we collectively recognized that the students who go out on a leave of absence, especially for mental health issues, at that point in time were not having consistent contact with the college. So we created a protocol so that the students could stay in contact with us through me, and that we could maintain the relationship and stay connected to the student and offer them whatever support or resources they may need while they're on a leave of absence. And I don't know if any of you have ever been through something like that, but it's a big transition. And if it's a mental health related leave, it's typically something that comes about relatively abruptly. So it's scary, it's new, and it throws a whole wrench in the life of the student. And so we recognize that as a challenging time for students, and we wanted them to know that they still had a connection here at PC. So I follow all of the students at PC who go out on a leave of absence, even students who go out for medical reasons. Since I'm a nurse, it seemed kind of logical that I would do that too. And that's one of the ways that we support our students. I do trainings for the students as well, and they fall into two categories. Typically, it's either a gatekeeping training or a bystander training, and I'll tell you the difference. So if a gatekeeper training is essentially helping students, and this is kind of what Jonathan was just talking about, helping students to identify their peers who are in some sort of emotional anguish or pain. And what we know research-wise is that typically, if students are suffering mentally, they will oftentimes, a large percentage of the time, go to their peers first. So what we want to do with gatekeeper training is arm the students who are being approached by their peers who are suffering with some information in terms of, you know, what am I looking for? What's the best way to talk to my peer? What's the best course of action? What are the resources available? How can I point my peer in the best direction to keep them safe? And it's a very important training, and it helps students feel a little bit more secure when they're approached by someone who's suffering emotionally. The bystander training is a little different in that this trains students to help not necessarily someone that they know, but if they're in a situation where they see something and they recognize that it's someone's in trouble, what are the best ways for them to intervene in terms of helping that person, the student that they may or may not know, in a situation that might be a little bit chaotic, let's say a party or something. And there's a step up, it's called Step Up Bystander Training, and there's a whole program that we use, and we have different scenarios that we can talk about with students, and we typically talk about, you know, a party situation with someone who's had too much to drink. We talk about different scenarios involving potential, sexual assault, and we also talk about situations involving, relationship violence and so on. And it's a way to help students learn ways that they can help, even if it's a stranger, keep themselves safe, but proactively help someone who's in trouble. And this kind of promotes this sort of friar family atmosphere that we have here, in terms of we care about you, and we don't stand by and watch this sort of behavior. We intervene on your behalf. So those are the trainings. And then the programming that we do is very much focused on what's called lived experience. And it's an interesting term, but what we try to do is bring in speakers who are around the same age as our students, who've had a history of mental illness, who've learned through different therapies, medications, mindfulness techniques, exercise, how to manage their mental illness, and have come out on the other side and want to talk to their peers about what that's like. And it's very powerful, and we've had maybe at least 4 of these presentations by different students, and some of them who had actively attempted suicide, and it sounds scary, but it's very powerful when you're listening to the story of someone who was at that point but then came back and learned how to heal themselves, and are now out in the world and being productive and sharing their message. So that's the program event planning that I do. And then the last piece is we've done this really exciting program where it's called an academic resilience fellowship, actually, and it's named after one of our alum. I don't know if you guys know this, but it's a company called Untuck It, and it's a shirt company. And this young man who graduated from PC, he had struggled with anxiety and depression when he was at PC, but he didn't know what it was. He didn't recognize it. He only discovered later on in graduate school that it was in fact a diagnosed mental illness. And then he became very sort of aware of wanting to promote awareness around mental illness. So he was generous enough to donate this small seed of money, and we advertised to our faculty if they would be willing to include resilience content in their coursework, and how they would include it, because we know that resilience is essentially the building blocks to mental health. I mean, resilience is how we deal with typically things like failure, disappointment, grief, loss, how we deal with the tough stuff in life. So we know that there's a lot of research that supports that building someone's resilience can make them stronger, not only academically, but mentally, socially, physically, and emotionally. So we decided to, take a chance and kind of put the word out, and we got 10 responses immediately. So last academic year, 10 of our faculty incorporated this resilience content into their coursework. So it became part of their coursework. And now we're looking at another wave of faculty, and we've got 17 applications. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to incorporate this wellness, this sense of taking control of your mental health as well as your physical health, this notion of building your resilience, your coping skills, and infusing it into academic programs so that more and more students are exposed to the material, more and more students can have these conversations in a classroom setting and feel okay about it. More and more students feel comfortable acknowledging that they have anxiety, depression, or other concerns mental health wise. It's been remarkable, and we're very excited about it. And the last piece, very quickly, is we also do some one-on-one resilience coaching for students who really want to hone in on their resilience building skills. They sound like they couldn't possibly make a difference, but they do. And the general subjects of the resilience coaching, one is cultivate gratitude. Gratitude, for whatever reason, has more bang for the buck than almost any other thing that we can do to help build our resilience. It's just acknowledging what we're grateful for on a daily basis. It makes a huge difference. So that's nice to know. Changing the narrative is another piece that we work on, which is typically that ongoing negative conversation that we're always having in our head. That's very difficult to kind of break down, take apart, and rebuild in a way that's constructive, but that's what we do. We talk about engaging with our community because we know that social connection is important. It's important to human beings in general, but it's especially important in the college setting. We talk about mindfulness and becoming present and present moment awareness and removing ourselves from that living in the past and the future so that we can focus on what's happening in the now. I think I've covered everything. I hope I have, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It was great to hear all the different perspectives, and we do have a number of questions that have come in. Additionally, if you have any questions of your own that you'd like to have asked, please use the Q&A section. We're going to try and get to as many of them as possible. And Jonathan, if you're able to, I'm not able to turn your video back on, so you may have to do that yourself. If not, but we can hear you just fine as well. So either way.
Sure.
So our first question is asking or saying that mental health issues can stem from many sources. What are some of the predominant ones on PC's campus?
Can you see me now?
No, where are you, Jonathan?
I can say
There you are.
Oh, good.
Perfect. So from a student perspective, where I see like sources coming from is definitely during freshman year, just that initial adjustment to college life and kind of figuring out where your place is on campus. I can assure you there is one because, like I said, I struggled with that transition myself. It just may take you some time to find out. This is what happened with me. But I think that's definitely a source where mental health issues can stem from, is just adjusting to time management, being away from your home, friends, and family, and adjusting to the college workload and all things like that.
Yeah, and in terms of the counseling center, the number one reported reason for coming is anxiety, followed by depression, number 2, and number 3, relationship difficulties. And in addition to those, as was just stated, adjustment and life transitions. And so it might be adjusting to college, it might be adjusting to maybe not wanting to leave college and go home for the summer. So it could be a plethora of reasons why people come, and it's a little bit of everything. But those 3 reasons that I shared are also the top 3 nationwide. So it's nothing unique to PC, it's a trend nationally.
Excellent. Our next question is a more technical one, probably a faster answer, but do you bill my health insurance for services, or what if I can't afford counseling?
I'm glad that got asked because that's something I didn't share. No, it's included in tuition and fees, so there's no charge for counseling, and we don't go through insurance at all.
And I can also say that our programming is free for students, and all of our trainings and our support services are free as well.
Excellent. Our next question is, I was excited to hear about the group option you're introducing, but does anyone on your staff specialize in LGBTQ counseling?
Yes, we have 2 people on staff who specialize in that, and there will be a LGBTQ plus group in the fall, but individually we have multiple staff who have specialized in that and also who identify within the community.
Excellent. Our next question is, I was sent the article about faculty being trained to help with well-being initiatives. Do you mind expanding on that a little more? Like, how does it show up day to day?
Well, each faculty has the ability to build in their own resilience content. So we give them a template and we give them a lot of resources that are evidence-based, practical interventions that they can use. But it really depends on how the faculty sees themselves integrating the material. I can tell you, based on our first round of RAR fellows, is they've all, on both sides, both the students and the faculty, have been amazed at what big changes these very small interventions make. So some students kept, personal journals. Some of the students had a mental health reflection time built into each class. Everybody had a different way of approaching it. But it's the notion of getting this out into the greater consciousness of the students via the classroom. Because when I do my stuff, I can only do it with one student, right? And even if I do trainings, I'm only able to train maybe 200 max at once. I mean, this is just such a better inoculation into the population.
Excellent. Our next question is, all information, especially regarding drug and alcohol use, kept 100% confidential?
Everything's confidential at the counseling center. So everything's private. It doesn't leave the office. However, there's two exceptions to that, so I'll share those very quickly. One is if somebody's safety is at risk. So if they're reporting that they can't keep themselves safe, and that could be related to alcohol or drug use, and their suicidal ideation is turning into thoughts of an attempt. The other way is if someone doesn't want things to be confidential. If they say, look, I'm not doing well. I'm wondering if you can share with my parents that I'm struggling with this, or can you share with my professor that I'm having these troubles? And in those situations, the student would sign a paper called a release of information, putting down the person's name that they give us legal permission to speak with. And we don't cold call anybody. So we would still need to hear the student tell us verbally, I'd like you to call this person, even if they've already signed that piece of paper. In terms of alcohol or other drug use, it is kept completely confidential as long as the student is over 18 years of age. And if the student hasn't gone through public safety or been transported or is going through the Office of Conduct, in those cases, other people might know just because they've been informed before we have. But in terms of what's being discussed with the counselor, that doesn't leave the counseling center.
Great, thank you. Our next question is actually for Brooke. Brooke, I love the work you're doing on reducing the stigma of mental health. Do you think it's a big issue on campus, and how successful have you been?
Yeah, totally. I think it's still just a big issue in society in general right now. I definitely think there has been improvement, but there's always room for more. And I think that on campus, I definitely, like I said, that first Active Minds meeting, they were saying, oh yeah, like I have this counseling session this week, I suffer from this. Like, so within the Active Minds, it's extremely open. And because everyone is open within that club, that extends to the rest of campus as well. I'll be hanging out with my friends and just say, oh, like I have my counseling center appointment at 1 o'clock, I have to go, and not feel weird about it. And I think that definitely helps other students to feel more comfortable sharing it. So it's definitely like a ripple effect. And I think there definitely has been improvement on Providence's campus.
Excellent. Our next question starts by saying, I've been involved in a lot of advocacy for sexual assault throughout high school. Do you have any of this sort of thing on campus? And what's the experience like for students who unfortunately may experience this?
I could take that one. So we do. We go through an organization and we collaborate with them called Day One. So if a student has experienced a sexual assault or wants to connect and do some advocacy work on campus, we have an organization that serves colleges in Rhode Island, and there's usually one person who staffs that, and they will take calls after hours. They've also come to our campus and done presentations for classes. I attended an event last year in which someone from the Day One organization came and we just had a social that was a fundraiser, and it was done at McPhail's, which is the pub on campus, with a class, a social work class. And it was a great time, but it was also educational at the same time. In terms of work related to that, all of our counselors on staff have experience working with trauma, and we're all generalists, but definitely have a lot of experience doing that in therapy too. And so that's a big part of the work we do individually, as well as outreach to the campus community too.
And regarding advocacy, if you are an admitted student and are coming to Providence, I definitely suggest you come to Active Minds. And if you have an event you think that you want to like help spread the awareness of, we are always open to new events and new ideas. And maybe if you don't come to campus next year, I think that's a great idea to help spread awareness on that exact issue. So thanks for bringing that up.
I'd just like to add that we do Sexual Assault Awareness Month programming for the entire month of April, which we've switched now to a virtual programming. We're doing a lot more events on social media, and we're doing a lot more. All of our presentations will be via social media, but it's a great month to get involved with if you're someone who's interested in supporting victims of sexual assault. And you can do it through any one of your student orgs. A lot of different student orgs participate in Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So.
Excellent, great, thank you. And one final question we have is, I think kind of best summarized, just talking about the intersection of mental health issues with academic pressures. And if you could share a little bit about how faculty are involved with the campus personal counseling center, and just kind of how those students are caught.
We do a lot of interaction at the counseling center with faculty. So faculty, as I said earlier, we do trainings with faculty on how to recognize when a student is in distress and how to best communicate that you're concerned about that student, and make sure that they come to the counseling center if they haven't already. As well, we often connect with specific faculty. If there's a student who says, I'm not doing well and I'm scared I might not pass my classes, what do I do? And the first response is usually, well, let's get everybody at the table so we can best help you. And that's us, that's your faculty, that's also the Office of Academic Services, OAS. We do a lot of collaboration with them to make sure that students are getting the accommodations they need, including accommodations for test taking anxiety, or anxiety in general. So there's a significant intersection between academic distress and mental health. And so all of our departments work very closely for that exact reason.
And I can say from the experience of our first wave of Riccobono Academic Resilience Fellows, introducing this resilience and mental wellness content into classrooms brought a lot of mental health content to the forefront for faculty who maybe hadn't had as much interaction in that way before. And it really started this great conversation about how to support faculty and how to train them in a way that's practical and relevant, and how to get them feeling more comfortable with these situations when a student comes to them in distress. So it's been a wonderful conversation start, and we're not done. We're still talking about it, and we're going to work on ways to really help support faculty.
And also, just as a student who works with our professors, I have never encountered a professor who doesn't want to see you succeed and doesn't want to help you. Cheryl touched upon the Fryer family before, and she wasn't lying. It is a family. Everyone wants you to be at your best as you can possibly be, and that includes professors, and they always are working to help you. And I know with online classes going on right now, I have reached out to some of my professors and said, hey, like, I'm struggling, like, can I have an extension on this deadline or whatever it is? And I've had such great reception to that.
Excellent, great. That is all the time that we have questions for, so thank you to everyone who did submit them. And thank you as well to our panelists for joining us this evening. If you do have any other questions afterwards, certainly feel free to be in touch with the Office of Admission, and we would be happy to put you in touch with the appropriate people on campus. And for all the admitted students who are heading after this to the virtual networking receptions, we hope you enjoy meeting many of our alums and current students from your region. But thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.